Welcome to Thursday. I am going to talk about beginnings. I often think people get stuck in beginnings and endings, and so sometimes just putting some language around that I think can be helpful. Where to start, and there's of course how to start your memoir, which is a big question, and then there's how to start scenes, but they're kind of one and the same. And then maybe next time I'll talk about endings as a counterpart. But I thought in thinking about the different memoirs that I've read over the years, it was actually kind of fun to think about five common places to start, and I'm sure there are others as well. But number one would be to start, and this is starting your memoir, start with an inciting incident. And so many people choose to start with an inciting incident, the thing that, like, this thing happened and then nothing was ever the same after that. If you want something dramatic, if you want something that pulls the reader in, if you want to start with a bang, I think that readers like that. I would say the publishing industry probably likes that. And so there are plenty of memoirs that will start with something like that as a way to hook you and get you right into the action. So that is certainly one way to start. The other thing is that there are more like slower character driven memoirs. And so another way to start would be to set up a scene that is meant to show someone in particular or to show your dynamic with someone in particular. I like those kinds of starts because I feel like they give us a sense of who the characters are. And if you are writing a book that is about like a prior relationship that you had, or if it's a mother-daughter book, or if it is primarily centering a family member, then just giving yourself that room to show yourself in situation with this particular other person who's going to be really central to the book can be a great way to just introduce your readers to those characters. The third one I have is more setting driven. Lots of times you'll see a book opening with kind of painting a picture, like it's regional, or maybe it's a travel memoir, or you're just trying to set up a sense of place because place is very central to your book. So you might see this in something like a book that centers a trip abroad, or if you're very much writing about where you live, and it's central to place. You're setting up the I want to say like the smells and the textures and the aroma of the atmosphere, all of that stuff can be very, I guess when I say quieter on the one hand, it's certainly not maybe as impactful as a inciting incident, but setting can be meaningful depending on the book that you're writing. And so keep that in mind as a possibility. I'm thinking about books that, are very much like they take place on the beach, or they take place in, Southern memoirs oftentimes have this really deep set sense of place because it's so important to the work itself. The next one, number four, would be something more subject or meaning driven. And so this would be really paying attention to a scene that introduces your themes, thinking strongly about if you have something that is very thematic in nature, subject driven. If you're writing a advocacy book, for instance, if you're writing a book in which you're being an expert in your particular subject matter, then you want to get into that right away. You want to make sure that your opening pages articulate that to the reader, and therefore your topic, themes, ideas are going to be more central and ought to be established right out the gate in some meaningful way. And then the final one I have is start with something that shows how things were right before they changed. So maybe your second chapter is going to be an inciting incident or show that something profound is different. But a lot of times people want to do what we call context setting, because you want to show that things were great and then everything descended into chaos, because of alcoholism. Um, you were in love and then everything fell apart because the person that you were in love with turned out to be not who you thought they were, right? But sometimes people want this kind of opening because you want to set yourself up to be a reliable narrator, right? You want to set yourself up to be like, this is how the rug got pulled out from under me. But before we see that happen, I want you to see that how things were. So that's another good place to start. So those are 5 different ways. I'm sure there are more. If you didn't notice your own, or if you have other ideas, this is not, it's never a totally conclusive list, but I thought it was kind of fun to think about. Inciting incident, character driven, setting driven, meaning driven, or context setting. So 5 different possibilities. I said I would say a word about starting scenes. I think starting scenes is so much about theme or time, paying attention to where you are. I am like I guess an obsessive when it comes to wanting to know where I am in the timeline. If I start to get too lost in that, it can be a little challenging. There are some books that I've read lately that don't have much of a sense of time, like Maggie Nelson's Bluets, for instance, and that was fine because it was such a poetic kind of experience. But lots of times just saying the next day, a month after the wedding, 2 years after my dad died, things like that that give us reference points back to things that we've already written are really great ways to start scenes. I woke up the next morning, right? These kinds of things that just land us along your timeline in some way. 2 years earlier, right? You're allowed to go back in time as well. And then the other way, like I said, is more theme driven, so that you're really paying attention to what are the topics and themes that you're talking about, so that when you open a next scene, you set a picture, perhaps of doing something around cooking or spending time with your dogs, or whatever it is that is moving the story along in a more thematic kind of way. But openings are all about trying to find your way into a scene, and that could be a slow entry, by painting scene or painting meaning, or sorry, painting setting is what I meant to say, or painting meaning. Or it could be a fast entry where you just get right into dialogue, or right into emotion. But anchoring the reader pretty quickly by locating your reader in time and place is always going to be very helpful, for readers to know we are starting something new. We're in a new place now. We're in a new emotion now. So just overall, kind of thinking about starting and thinking about guiding your reader into those starting points. So that's it for today. Thanks, everybody.